Peter, most assuredly I say to you, that before the rooster crows, you will have denied me 3 times. Everybody knows that story. Everybody's heard that story. But is that what the story really says? The Bible is pretty clear on what it says, but let's look at Jewish culture and Jewish tradition to look at this from a different lens and look at it pretty closely. Let's get started. In the Mishnah, the earliest compilation of rabbinic oral law, states that roosters or chickens may not be raised in Jerusalem due to purity concerns. This decree comes from the 1st century when the temple stood in Jerusalem in Jesus' time. So if roosters were not permitted to be raised in Jerusalem, are the Gospels wrong? No, just misinterpreted. Now this is going to be kind of controversial, and this might be something new for a lot of you, but that's okay. I'm going to give you plenty of references to prove that it wasn't a rooster at all. You say, what? But that's what the Bible says. No, that's what the Bible was misinterpreted. All right, let's get to it. Obviously, you know that the Jewish day begins at sundown. The daytime was divided into 12 hours, but the day division of hours was focused on the schedule of the Tamid sacrifice, what hours that you sacrificed in the temple. In the 1st century AD, time of Jesus, the night was divided into the other 12 hours, and they were divided up into 4 watches of 3 hours apiece. So, from sundown, which was 6 p.m., to 9 p.m. was the first watch. Then from 9 p.m. to midnight, second watch. Midnight to 3, third watch. 3 to 6 a.m., the fourth watch. So you're with me so far. Daytime had 12 hours, nighttime had 12 hours, divided into 4 sections of 3 hours apiece. All right. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Here's where we're headed with this. From the third watch, that third watch was at 3 a.m., there was what they call a cockcrow, or a trumpet call. This signaled the end of the third watch, beginning of the fourth watch. Did you hear what I just said? That the end of the third, starting the fourth watch, what they called the cockcrow, was actually a trumpet blast, the sound of the trumpet. Are you making the connection now? The Roman guards split their watches up in the same manner. So their night watches had the same pattern and the same hours. But they called the end of the third watch the Gallicinium. And if you know Spanish, gallo, rooster, chicken, that's where they get that word from, Gallicinium, or the cock crow, marked by a trumpet blast at 3 a.m. Are you making the dots and the connections yet? So it could be the first Gallicinium. The Roman fortress in Jerusalem was at the corner of the Temple Mount. Therefore, the trumpet blast of the Gallicinium would have been heard by Jesus and his disciples across the Kidron Valley on the Mount of Olives. So Jesus, hearing the Gallicinium at 3 a.m., predicts that before the cock crows again the second time, which would be the ordinary crowing of a rooster at daybreak or 6 a.m., Peter will have denied him 3 times. So hold on. Let me put it in very simple terms. The first trumpet blast, changing of the guards, if you will, was at 3 a.m. Trumpet blast. All right? The next shift change, if you will, was at 6 a.m. So that's when Peter realized what had happened, and he wept bitterly. When the rooster crowed or the trumpet blast at 6 a.m. is when he just couldn't take it anymore and he remembered what Jesus said. So let's continue with this theme, and I'll show you. If you look up Easton's Bible Dictionary under cockcrowing, this is what it says. In our Lord's time, Jesus, the Jews had adopted the Greek and Roman division of the night into 4 watches, like I said, each considering 3 hours, or consisting of. The first beginning at 6 o'clock in the evening, and here's your references if you want to write them down or pay attention. Luke 12:38, Matthew 14:25, and Mark 6:48. But the ancient division known as the first and second cock crowing was still retained. The cock usually crows several times soon after midnight. This is the first cock crowing. And again at the dawn of day, and this is the second cock crowing. Mark mentions in 14:30 the 2 cock crowings. Matthew in 26:34 alludes to that only, which was emphatically the cock crowing, or the second one. So what they're saying is, Mark says there's 2 cock crowings, one at 3 a.m., one at 6 a.m. And Matthew is only saying there was one, but that's when Peter realized what was happening, and that was the second cock crowing, which would have been 6 a.m. And I'll prove that, and I'll tell you how. Here's where we're going. But how do you know that this was cock crowing, not by a rooster, but by watchmen? Because there are many references in the Bible to watchmen and not roosters crowing. Jeremiah 6:17. And I set watchmen over you, saying, listen to the sound of the trumpet. But they said, we will not listen. Ezekiel 33:6. But if the watchman sees the sword coming and does not blow the trumpet, and the people are not warned, and a sword comes and takes a person from them, he is taken away in his iniquity, but his blood I require from the watchman's hand. Song of Solomon, or Song of Songs 5:7. The watchman who makes the rounds in the city found me. They struck me and wounded me. The guardsmen of the walls took away my shawl from me. So you see the watchmen, you see the guards, you see in those instances where the trumpet sounded. And what that's saying is that was signaling the end of the watch, or shift change, if you will. So let's look at some passages here in the New Testament. Mark 13:38. Jesus answered him, will you lay down your life for my sake? Most assuredly I say to you, the rooster shall not crow till you have denied me 3 times. New King James. Mark 14:72. A second time the rooster crowed. And Peter called to mind the word that Jesus had said to him, before the rooster crows twice, you will deny me 3 times. And he thought about it, and he wept. Luke 22, verse 34. But Jesus said, Peter, let me tell you something. Before the rooster crows tomorrow morning, you will deny me 3 times that you don't even know me. New Living Translation. Morning, that would be 6 a.m. Would it not? Because 3 a.m. is not morning, it's early morning, but it's not daybreak morning. 6 a.m. is daybreak morning. So what he's saying is by daybreak, 6 a.m., you will have denied me 3 times. All right, let's go back to Mark 14, verse 66. Now, as Peter was below in the courtyard, one of his servants' girls of the high priest came. And when she saw Peter warming himself, she looked at him and said, "You are with Jesus of Nazareth." But he denied it, saying, "I neither know nor understand what you're saying." He went out onto the porch. And a rooster crowed. But it really wasn't a rooster. It was a trumpet blast, a trumpet sound. And the servant girl saw him again and began to say to those who stood by, "This is one of them." But he denied it again. And a little later, those who stood by said to Peter again, "Surely you're one of them. You are a Galilean. Your speech gives you away." Then he began to curse and swear, "I do not know this man of whom you speak." A second time the rooster crowed. And Peter called to mind the word that Jesus said to him before the rooster crows twice. "You will deny me 3 times." And he thought about it, and he wept. Matthew 26:74. It says a rooster crowed. Luke 22:60. A rooster crowed. Then the Lord turned and looked at Peter. This is verse 61. In Luke 22, then Peter remembered the word of the Lord. He had said, "Before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times." And he went out and he wept bitterly, is what Luke's account says. So you can see that it wasn't a rooster at all. It was a trumpet blast or a trumpet sound. How do we know this? I've given you some things. I've given you from the Mishnah. I've given you from the Watchman. But I want to share this Jewish custom as well. The ancient Jewish sources offer a solution. In describing the activities that went on in the Jerusalem temple, the Mishnah references a specific time in the early morning. He that was minded to clean the altar of ashes rose up early and immersed himself or mikvahed himself before the officer came. Shift change. At what time did he come? Not always at the same time. Sometimes he came at cockcrow, which was the trumpet blast, and sometimes a little sooner or later. Cockcrow refers to a time early in the morning when the priests would begin to prepare the temple for daily visitors. Every day they used to remove the ashes from off the altar at cockcrow or trumpet blast. And it does not mean a rooster crow at all, but rather a blast from the trumpet at the temple that announced the time. A cockcrow, they blew a sustained quavering and another sustained blast. So in other words, cockcrow refers to a time early in the morning when a trumpet signaled the beginning of the day for work in the temple. So what we're seeing here is you have a trumpet blast for a shift change, and it tells the priests, hey, you need to get to work. You need to go to the altar of sacrifice, remove the ashes, and prepare everything for the morning so that when 6 a.m. comes along and the trumpet sounds again, everything's ready for daybreak. So at 3 a.m., you hear the trumpet blast. They start preparing everything. 6 a.m., trumpet blast, everything's ready to roll. So did you get that? All that to say this, that at 3 a.m., there was a trumpet sound. And that's when Peter started denying him. And by the third denial, when he denied him for the third time, the trumpet sounded, and that's when he wept bitterly because he remembered what Jesus said. By the time the cock crowed, but it wasn't a cock crowing, it wasn't a rooster, it was a trumpet sound, signaling the 6 a.m. morning daybreak and the time in the temple where everything was ready to roll and get ready for all the visitors. So do you understand what it's saying? That a cock crow really isn't a rooster at all. It's a trumpet sound. I thought that was very interesting. This really blew my mind when I figured all this out and when I saw this and connected all the dots like I'm doing with you. All right, don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the bell icon so you receive notification every time we release a video for you. And lastly, and most importantly, share this video with everyone so they can be as blessed and informed as you. And do it before the cock crows the second time. All right, shalom, till next time.